from a resource crisis. People say we face a crisis of resources or crisis of membership. I think we face a crisis of imagination. I think our imagination has become so truncated and we think so small that there's no room for the Holy Spirit. And I think that what we really need is a huge explosion of imagination. And I think we need to expect that this, whatever we do, it will be a work of God. It will be a work of the Holy Spirit. And the point is lives transformed. Not just those people, but us too. Lives transformed by the Holy Spirit doing real change in the work, in the lives of people. So if as a synod, if we can encourage our Asian American congregations to have new forms of ministry that will reach young adults in new ways, and it's in order to help people have real experiences of the living God, then I am all for that. But if it's just to get people to join in activities, then there are plenty of people out there organizing activities. But we have the Holy Spirit, and we have the power of Pentecost. We have the living God who's called us and sends us in the world to be ambassadors. So I think we've got a winning commission. And the challenge is for us to be creative, and I think in our case as Presbyterians, for presbyteries to be creative too. I think I'll stop. I don't know what you want to do now. I'll just stop.
Let me show you. You know where is our logo in the church? And I show you the new logo of PMA. That is my name card. It's passed. You see, our Presbyterian Mission Agency, we just developed a new logo. And can you see the new logo identified with the old one? Can you see that? You see something same as the old logo? Something? Can you tell what is the new logo?
The book and
For the
Presbyterian
mission,
Mission. What do you say?
not for the PCUSA, just for the mission.
Yes.
Yeah. But this new logo want to give everyone a new imagination about PCUSA. Because before, always they feel, well, that one is old. But we want to develop kind of new image. So do you see, can you tell something, same item?
Bible breathing fire.
Fire.
The flame out of the
The
Bible.
fire
And the scriptures.
and
Scriptures.
okay.
Open.
There's the Bible, right? Can you see the Bible there? In the pulpit? Okay. So I just want to share with you what our PCUSA try to do something to, build a kind of new spirit. It looks more younger than that one, right? More fresh, different color, right? That is a younger color, or the kind of modern style color. That is what we have tried to do. And now I would like to invite Reverend Sonny from the Pacific Presbyterian to share about their young adult ministries.
Let me see. I think I'm going to take my time and to talk about two different things a little bit, if you don't mind. Beyond one part, I'll talk about what we are trying to do in the Presbyterian Pacific to help develop ministries for young adults throughout the Presbyterian, across all the racial lines to all the churches. But I want to talk about specifically about Asian ministries and Asian congregations, or congregations of Asian heritage in particular. And Dr. Tang and I have been involved in this conversation for a very long time, because The first time he tended to me and took care of me was, I think it was about 22 years ago when we were in a book committee together with San Francisco Theological Seminary. And we were trying to address the question about the faith in the Asian community as a whole. And the area that I was constantly pushing was trying to consider what is the implication of ministry beyond immigration. I was 11 years old when I came to the United States. So I did not grow up in Asian American churches because there was no other Asians where I grew up. And when I got to college and after college, I was asked to come in and help at a Korean church because they did not have anyone that could help the young people. So I developed the first English ministry back in '86, and I didn't have any college and young adults in the church. So all decided with the high school because all the college and young adults were going away out of Minneapolis. But when we built the ministry, I was able to take 6 months and finally was able to convince the pastor in the session to allow us to start an English worship service. Until then, they were part of Christian education. But we restructured the church. And when we started the English worship service, the only request I had of the pastor is that everything is shut down in the church when there's English worship service. There's no Korean Bible studies. We closed the nursery. We closed everything. The only thing that happened was the worship service in English. And what that meant was the whole family came and worshiped together. And we let infants in so that we were able to get 3 generations to worshiping together from day one. And so, because I was not ordained at the time, I didn't preach at the beginning, but we had preachers coming in every single week, but I planned all of the worship. And it was built around the idea that we had to work when students were 18 years old, training them how to be leaders of that church, to be elders and deacons in next 10 years, so that these young people could come back and be the elders and deacons of the church. And so the Korean ministry and English ministry built parallel leadership structure. So the Korean pastor changed and the structure along the way and how they were structuring the elders and deacons, and English ministry developed in the same way. And so in the end, it was 2 deacons in the same area working together, one in Korean, one in English, so the entire congregation could be taken care of. Because too often we were seeing examples of anything with English, it's kids ministry or Christian education, and they were just put in the basement of the church, or it was just left off. And the whole dynamic, the main part of the church or the congregation was seen as one that was the immigrant community, and that dominated the whole thought. What we had predicted, and we came to see that our guesses were true, was that over time, in most other places, when they had the English ministry set apart and the whole church was not being built together, what happens is that young people don't stay in the church. When we started English ministry that way in the Presbyterian church in Minnesota, we were the smallest of like 4 Korean churches. 10 years later, other 3 were exact same size. Other Methodists, Baptists, and so on, were still the exact same size because their children who they had in the larger, quote-unquote, the youth service, had all gone to college, moved away. After college, they moved on and got jobs in other cities, and they were gone. And they were just continuing youth ministries. But when we trained them and we sent them off to college and we said, come back to Minneapolis to raise your family, vast majority of them came back after 4 to 8 years. But when they came back as college professors, as doctors, as dentists, as engineers. And then we had ready-made the leadership team of young adults, and we had the structure ready to go, so that they stepped into the position. Ones who grew up in the church, then stepped into the position of deacons and elders. So within 12 years, we were able to have English-speaking young adults as the elders of the church, and the elders, Korean-speaking elders, were willing to listen to them because we've been working together for 12 years along the way. Too often, I think we take a short look of Asian ministry, and we just simply say, if we get these kids to recite the right doctrine, then they will become Christians, and then we can make them do work in the church, and they will stay. But most often, they feel they're forced into work that nobody wants to do, and not all of them are meant to be Sunday school teachers. Not all of them are gifted to be deacons. Not all of them are gifted in various areas that church structure puts together. But we were able to find people who will start a newspaper for the church. So we developed a whole new ministry to adopted Koreans, and we started the Korean newspaper. Now it's been going on for over 17 years, called Korean Quarterly. And it prints over 10,000 copies and goes out to 12 different countries. And so the church's ministry expanded out widely. And then we had to create, and we created these areas of ministries where young adults could literally lead the way. And Korean speaking were asked simply to come along on the side, but they were asked not to take leadership. And we were able to create the first Asian or Korean and Native American ministry in South Dakota. And that was created 20 years ago. And that there's a constant mission trip that works in partnership with the Lakota people on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And it is continuing to be sustained because it's a ministry of the whole church. And we've developed that agreement and partnership with the Lakota tribe. And things that we've learned in all these processes is that ministry to this younger generation looks very different in how you develop leaders and the kind of ministries that work. Because what we found out over the years is that they do not want to be the ones just keeping up the old ministries, but they need to be given the responsibility to lead and do something completely different. Do it on their own and their own friends. Most of my ministry has been outside of Asian American churches. Most of my years have been spent in Congregational churches. And we did the crazier things to reach out to college students at a church. Like we would have, they have kids play video games, and now college students play video games. We set up an electrical wire system so that they can have this video, it's like gaming nights at the church. So we put different kind of snakes in, and so that could hold up to 120 kids in the basement of the church playing video games. And they had a whole contest, and they organized all of this, and you wouldn't believe how many people that draws. It is finding ways for churches to connect with what young people are doing now. I think that is important. Rather than saying, we want you to leave your world and come into our church world. Because we too often think the way we believe in God and how we say it is how they must say it. I have 3 college-age children. Oldest just graduated from college, and he lives in New York City, and I got 2 still in college. And I asked them, I said, well, do you go to church on Sunday? Pastor Father asks, right? They said no. And of course I have to ask a second question. Did you try to find anything? And my son gave me the most discouraging answer, and he said, yeah, I went to church, and the church is a couple of miles away, and they said, oh, would you come back to church? Oh, you can play guitar now, worship, that would be great, you can do all these things for us. He said, can anybody give me a ride? And nothing. He even wrote a note to the church and said, could somebody, if I can get a ride, I can come and do these. And nope, we got no responses. Nothing. And I think one of the things that we really have to think about as the Asian American churches is that immigrant churches are going to be around for a little while longer because immigration is going to happen for a little while. But if all of our efforts are concerning English-speaking members as a separate thing out of these other than the immigrant churches, then immigrant churches are going to disappear, and English-speaking Asian Americans are going to disappear. And there isn't going to be anything. I grew up in Minneapolis where there are Swedish and there are Norwegian Lutheran churches. And I was just a couple of blocks away from one church where I lived just a couple of blocks away from a Norwegian church. And that is the longest lasting Norwegian worship service. Finally, they put up a sign in 1986 that they now have an English worship service. In 1986 was the first time they had an English worship service at this Norwegian Lutheran church. Until then, it was only in Norwegian. And they couldn't figure out why nobody was coming to church. They changed in 86, added an English worship service. 87, they closed their doors because there was nobody they could get. I believe, and I think, too many of our efforts concerning English ministries are too focused on the idea that these young people are too young and these are not adults. And I still believe that even in the English ministry side of the thing, that idea still prevails. And this is, I think, part of the reason that many of our faith formation processes for English speaking are too didactic and too much oriented to say, believe these things have the right doctrine, but is not given an opportunity to explore ideas and say, what do you think? What do you believe? And finding the ways of valuing how young people are thinking. And I don't think we do that. But that's just some of my personal opinions, and I have most of my ministry years were spent in creating new programs and new ways of doing churches. And I found that whether I'm doing that in Chicago or Miami or in Minneapolis or in northern Minnesota or to Southern California, all the same thing. There are no special formulas. There is no special ways that will make it better than, or no one place provides any unique, different opportunities that no one else has. Each has its own set of difficulties. But I think this is what Steve was talking about, that just needing to experiment and letting the people who have passion or idea for something and let them go at it. And I think particularly Asian American immigrant churches need to encourage the English-speaking young members to work together from other churches beyond denomination. Because I think our denomination has been talking about wrong things for the last few years. And I think we have wasted a lot of time that we needed to invest in our young people. Because Pope just even came out and said, hey, issues of, the gay rights or the abortion, that is not the issue that church ought to be dealing with right now. What we ought to be dealing with is how to reach people with the grace of God. Because that's where the people are at. And if we're not talking about how do we go about helping people experience the grace and love of God, it will make church absolutely obsolete in the next 25 years. And we're going to be having different questions, and that question might be about should we exist at all. So in Presbyterian Pacific, what we have done in the last few years is really put our emphasis in making resources available for young people to try ministries. For example, we have put together a special grant program called Christ at the Door. And it can only be applied to programs where young people are initiating it. It's led and directed by the young people. Now, that means all the younger people, up to 30 or younger, have to run the program. Now, older members may help, could be part of the program, but one's own leadership must be younger, and they must be experimenting with something completely new. And we say is innovation is required, but promise of success is not. Ideas would try anything. So a group of from the church up by UCLA, they want to put together a worship service at one of the rescue missions, and we said, here's $5,000. We'll do whatever you want with it. And they came back with another one, wanting to put together get a hand out hot dogs and food on UCLA campus and hand out during the registration weeks and first few weeks. We said, go do it, and here's money. No questions asked. Only thing we ask is that Presbyterian will commission them so that when they do it on the behalf of all the Presbyterian churches of our Presbyterian. And when they come back, they have to give us a report. And all we say is, all we need is just one page. Tell us what you want to do, tell us how you're going to spend the money, and that's the only thing we ask. Nothing else. Another thing we have done is we have called the Urban Church Renewal Fund. In the previous years, some churches and buildings have been sold, and all of that money has been put into these the dividend use only account, so the capital will always be there. And as churches are now looking at how to creating, reinventing itself in a way to really connect back with their community and the younger people being in leadership, we give them grants that can go up to 3 years and up to $20,000 a year, so they can implement these new ideas and new plans. And whole idea is that we want to encourage them to do complete innovation, to come up with new ideas, doing something differently. And again, they only got a couple, 3 questions, and most of the proposals about 2, maybe 3 pages long. And some of them we have supported in that regard as a Hispanic ministry starting a radio program. And would you believe it or not, now they have 30 people in the Bible study on a weekly basis because people are listening to the radio program coming in. Nobody, we thought, who they listen to religious radio? But there are certain segment of Hispanic community that was very looking for that. We gave grant money to an African American church to work with foster kids and then create a life skills program where they can teach the foster kids. Now they got over 25 foster kids coming into the system and into the church program. So it's anything to just continue to generate new ideas, and we put the money into these kind of things and money into congregations that are trying new things. The third thing we have done is we have done a lot of connecting with various organizations that do various ministries and made the churches